Pope Paul VI was delivering Sunday Mass to 40,000 pilgrims in St. Peter's Basilica when a voice from the crowd stopped him mid-prayer. "Your Holiness," the voice said, calm and clear in perfect Italian. "Before you ask God for forgiveness, shouldn't you ask forgiveness from the children you failed?" Every head in the massive cathedral turned to see a well-dressed black man in a charcoal suit standing in the center aisle. His hands clasped behind his back, showing no fear of the Swiss guards already moving toward him. Pope Paul VI stared at the stranger, and something in the man's eyes made the pontiff's blood run cold. "I am Bumpy Johnson," the man continued, "and I have traveled for 1,000 miles to deliver a message from the children of Harlem to thee, man who claims to speak for God." What happened in the next 15 minutes would force the most powerful religious leader in the world to his knees in front of 40,000 witnesses and changed the Catholic Church forever. The confrontation in St. Peter's Basilica was the culmination of a war that had been building for 3 years, a war between the Vatican and a Harlem gangster over something more precious than money or territory: the souls of innocent children. The story begins in 1962, when Cardinal Francis Spellman of New York made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Spellman controlled the Catholic Church's operations in New York City, including dozens of orphanages, schools, and hospitals that served the city's poor. But Spellman also harbored a secret that made him vulnerable to blackmail. He had been systematically stealing money from church collections and using it to fund a lavish lifestyle that included expensive artwork, luxury apartments, and young male companions. By 1962, Spellman had embezzled over $2 million from church funds money that was supposed to feed, house, and educate the poorest children in New York, when diocesan accountants began asking questions about missing funds. Spellman needed a scapegoat. He found one in the most vulnerable population he could target: the black children in Harlem's Catholic institutions. Spellman's plan was diabolically simple. He would claim that money had been misallocated due to administrative errors in programs serving black communities. He would close Harlem's Catholic schools and orphanages, fire their staff, and relocate the children to institutions outside the city, effectively destroying the support system that hundreds of families depended on. But Spellman made one crucial error. He assumed that black families had no power to fight back against the Catholic Church. Sister Mary Catherine ran St. Augustine's orphanage on 125th Street in Harlem. The orphanage housed 47 children, most of them victims of poverty, abandonment, or family tragedy. Sister Mary Catherine had devoted her life to these children. And when Cardinal Spellman announced that St. Augustine's would be closed due to budget constraints, she knew something was wrong. The numbers didn't add up. St. Augustine's was one of the most efficiently run orphanages in the diocese, with lower per-child costs than institutions in wealthier neighborhoods. The children were healthy, well-educated, and successfully being placed with adoptive families. There was no legitimate reason to close the facility. Sister Mary Catherine began investigating, quietly reviewing financial records and asking questions about the diocese's budget allocations. What she discovered was evidence of massive financial fraud money being diverted from programs for poor children to fund. Cardinal Spellman expenses. But when Sister Mary Catherine tried to report her findings to church authorities, she was told that questioning Cardinal Spellman's decisions was tantamount to questioning God himself. She was transferred to a convent in rural Pennsylvania, effectively silenced and removed from the children she had sworn to protect. That's when the children of St. Augustine's orphanage did something unprecedented in Catholic church history. They went to Bumpy Johnson for help. 12-year-old Marcus Williams was the unofficial leader of the older children at St. Augustine's. Marcus was smart, brave, and absolutely devoted to the younger children who looked up to him as a big brother. When Marcus learned that the orphanage would be closed and the children scattered to different institutions across the state, he made a decision that would change everything. Marcus had heard stories about Bumpy Johnson, how he protected his community, how he stood up to powerful people who tried to hurt innocent families, how he never backed down from a fight when children were involved. So on a cold February morning in 1963, Marcus walked out of St. Augustine's, took the subway to Small's Paradise, and asked to speak with Bumpy Johnson. "Mr. Johnson," Marcus said, standing in Bumpy's office with his hands folded respectfully. "They're trying to steal our home." "En desistir, Marie?" "Catherine says it's because they stole our money first." Bumpy listened as Marcus explained the situation with Cardinal Spellman, the planned closure of St. Augustine's, and Sister Mary Catherine's discovery of financial fraud. When Marcus finished, Bumpy was quiet for a long time. "Son," Bumpy finally said, "you understand that what you're re-asking me to do is go to war with the Catholic Church?" "Yes, sir." "But they went to war with us first. They're just hoping we're too small to fight back." That afternoon, Bumpy began an investigation that would ultimately reach the highest levels of the Vatican. Using his network of contacts throughout New York, including accountants, lawyers, and even priests who had become disgusted with Spellman's corruption, Bumpy documented a pattern of financial abuse that spanned decades. The evidence was damning. Cardinal Spellman had stolen over $2 million from church funds, money that was supposed to support orphanages, schools, and hospitals serving New York's poorest communities. Instead, the money had been used to purchase expensive art, maintain luxury apartments, and pay for trips to Europe with young male companions. But Bumpy knew that having evidence wasn't enough. Cardinal Spellman was protected by the church hierarchy, by political connections, and by the assumption that no one would dare challenge such a powerful religious figure. To save St. Augustine's and expose Spellman's crimes, Bumpy would need to go to the very top. In March 1963, Bumpy Johnson did something no gangster had ever done. He requested an audience with Pope Paul VI. The request was submitted through official church channels, with Bumpy identifying himself as a concerned Catholic layman who wished to discuss matters of grave importance to the spiritual welfare of children in New York. The request was accompanied by a substantial donation to the Vatican's charity fund and letters of recommendation from several legitimate Catholic organizations that Bumpy had secretly been supporting for years. To everyone's surprise, Pope Paul VI granted the audience. The meeting was scheduled for March 19, 1965, the Feast of Saint Joseph, patron saint of families and children. Bumpy Johnson arrived in Rome accompanied by Marcus Williams, now 15 years old and serving as a witness to everything that had transpired. They were also accompanied by Sister Mary Catherine, who had been secretly working with Bumpy to document Spellman's crimes and who had agreed to testify before the Pope himself. The private audience was scheduled to last 15 minutes. It lasted 3 hours. Bumpy presented Pope Paul VI with detailed financial records showing Cardinal Spellman's embezzlement testimony from children and families who had been harmed by the closure of Catholic institutions and evidence that Spellman had used church funds to cover up sexual scandals involving young men. But the Pope's initial response was disappointing. Paul VI expressed concern about the allegations but suggested that internal church procedures would be sufficient to address any problems. He thanked Bumpy for his devotion to the children, but made it clear that the Vatican would not intervene in Cardinal Spellman's administration of the New York diocese. That's when Bumpy played his final card. "Your Holiness," Bumpy said quietly, "with all due respect, you're not understanding the situation. This isn't a request for the Vatican to investigate Cardinal Spellman. This is notification that if the Catholic Church doesn't do the right thing, I will." The Pope looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean that every newspaper in America, every television station, every radio program will receive copies of these financial records. The world will learn that the Catholic Church stole money from orphans to pay for Cardinal Spellman's art collection and his relationships with young men. The scandal won't just destroy Spellman, it will destroy the Church's reputation in America. Are you threatening the Holy See?" "No, Your Holiness, I'm offering you a choice. You can handle this quietly, internally, with justice for the children and appropriate punishment for Cardinal Spellman. Or you can handle this publicly, with the whole world watching, as the Catholic Church is exposed for protecting corruption while children suffer." Pope Paul VI was silent for several minutes. Finally, he asked, "What do you want?" "I want St. Augustine's orphanage and all the other closed institutions reopened immediately. I want Sister Mary Catherine reinstated and given full authority over child welfare programs in Harlem. I want Cardinal Spellman removed from his position and the stolen money returned to the programs it was taken from. And I want you to personally apologize to these children for what the Church allowed to happen to them." "That's impossible. I cannot publicly apologize for allegations that haven't been proved, you Holin. The question is whether you choose to acknowledge that proof privately or have it acknowledged for you publicly." The meeting ended without resolution. Pope Paul VI said he would consider Bumpy's demands and provide an answer within 1 week. 1 week later, Bumpy Johnson received a message from the Vatican. His demands were unreasonable and contrary to church protocol. Cardinal Spellman would remain in his position and the closed institutions would not be reopened. That is when Bumpy Johnson made a decision that shocked the Catholic world. He would force the Pope to face the children he had failed in front of the largest possible audience. March 26, 1965, Palm Sunday. St. Peter's Basilica was packed with 40,000 pilgrims from around the world for one of the most important services in the Catholic calendar. Pope Paul VI was celebrating Mass at the high altar, his voice echoing through the massive cathedral as he led prayers for forgiveness and redemption. Bumpy Johnson was sitting in the 5th row, wearing his finest suit and showing no sign of the weapons he had somehow smuggled past Vatican security. Beside him sat Marcus Williams, now 16 and no longer the frightened child who had first asked for Bumpy's help. They had flown to Rome on forged passports, using identities that Bumpy's organization had been developing for months. At 11:30 a.m., as Pope Paul VI began the prayer of confession, Bumpy stood up. "Your Holiness," his voice carried clearly through the cathedral, "before you ask God for forgiveness. Shouldn't you ask forgiveness from the children you failed?" The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Swiss guards began moving toward Bumpy from multiple directions. Cardinals on the altar looked shocked and confused. 40,000 pilgrims turned to stare at the man who had dared to interrupt the Pope's Mass, but Bumpy continued speaking, his voice calm and clear in perfect Italian that he had spent months learning for this moment. "I am Bumpy Johnson from Harlem, New York. 3 years ago, a 12-year-old boy named Marcus Williams came to me because the Catholic Church was stealing money from orphans and closing their homes. I brought evidence of this theft to you personally. You chose to protect the thieves and abandon the children." Pope Paul VI raised his hand, trying to signal for security to remove Bumpy quickly and quietly. But Bumpy had anticipated this. "If you have me arrested, Your Holiness, the story of Cardinal Spellman's embezzlement will be front-page news in every newspaper in the world by tomorrow morning. 40,000 people will witness the Catholic Church silencing someone who came to speak for children." The Pope paused, his hand still raised, understanding that he was trapped. "What do you want?" Pope Paul VI asked, his voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. "You to kneel, Urolin. I want you to kneel before these 40,000 witnesses and ask forgiveness from the children you failed. I want you to admit that the Catholic Church stole money from orphans and closed their homes too. Cover up Cardinal Spellman's crimes. And I want you to promise that every institution will be reopened and every stolen dollar returned." The cathedral was absolutely silent. 40,000 people held their breath, waiting to see if the Pope would kneel before a gangster from Harlem. Pope Paul VI looked at Bumpy Johnson, then at Marcus Williams, then at the faces of 40,000 pilgrims who were watching the most unprecedented moment in modern Catholic history. And then, slowly, Pope Paul VI sank to his knees. "Ah, forgiveness, the Pope say," his voice breaking. "From the children of St. Augustine's orphanage and all the children who suffered because the Church failed in its sacred duty to protect the innocent. I ask forgiveness for the corruption that stole food from their mouths and homes from their hearts. And I promise before God and these witnesses that justice will be done." The kneeling lasted only 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds changed the Catholic Church forever. Within 1 month, Cardinal Francis Spellman was quietly removed from his position and transferred to a monastery in Ireland. $2 million was returned to Catholic institutions serving poor communities in New York. St. Augustine's orphanage was reopened with Sister Mary Catherine as its director. But more importantly, Pope Paul VI announced sweeping reforms to prevent financial abuse within the Catholic Church, including independent oversight of all diocesan budgets and mandatory reporting of suspected corruption. Bumpy Johnson never spoke publicly about what happened in St. Peter's Basilica. When asked by reporters about rumors that he had forced the Pope to kneel, Bumpy would simply say, "Sometimes powerful people need to be reminded that they serve something greater than themselves." Marcus. Williams grew up to become a priest himself, dedicating his life to serving children in the same community where Bumpy Johnson had once protected him. He kept a photograph in his office, a picture of Pope Paul VI kneeling in St. Peter's Basilica as a reminder that justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Sister Mary Catherine continued running St. Augustine's orphanage until her death in 1987. She placed over 300 children with loving families during her career and never forgot the gangster who had saved her life's work by making a pope kneel for forgiveness. On March 26, 1965, 40,000 people witnessed something that had never happened before in the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church, a pope kneeling in public confession, not to God, but to the children he had failed to protect. The man who forced that moment of divine humility was not a saint or a prophet. He was a gangster from Harlem who understood something that the Vatican had forgotten: that real power comes not from authority or tradition, but from the courage to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, even if it means making the most powerful religious leader in the world kneel before the children he was supposed to save.